So, whatever happened to the original Star Trek Galileo 7 shuttlecraft? Let's find out. Movies,
music, and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here from Media Master Design, where we talk about movies, music, and monsters. The original Star Trek television series ran from 1966 until 1969. And believe it or not, the original shuttlecraft was only seen in, I believe, 5 episodes. Galileo 7, Metamorphosis, The Doomsday Machine, Journey to Babel, and The Immunity Syndrome. Now, this huge prop was made for the first season of Star Trek. However, during the filming of the first season episode, The Enemy Within, the producers of Star Trek went to Desilu Studios and said, hey, we could really use this thing called a shuttlecraft. But Desilu looked at the budget and said, nope. Gene Roddenberry and the producers just continued to ask. Finally, Desilu agreed to have a full-size shuttlecraft made, and the story is really quite interesting. They reached out to a company called AMT, and those of you who collect models will certainly recognize that name. Very famous classic model kits from AMT. The Enterprise, the Klingon, the Galileo 7. I mean, who didn't have these models? Basically, AMT told Desilu, we will build all of this stuff for you for free. No charge. All we want are the licensing rights to make and sell the models. So, on August 1st, 1966, a contract was signed between Desilu Studios and AMT Models to build not only the giant exterior of the shuttlecraft, but also the interior and the miniature filming model. The final price for all of this from AMT came in at about $24,000, which was just about double the original estimate. And this thing was huge, over 24 feet long. Now, before we got the actual shuttlecraft design that we all have come to know and love, there were earlier previous designs. Walter Matt Jeffries, who was a designer, originally intended it to be more of an airplane with wings and a more curved hull, and they went through several different designs. Well, the guys over at AMT, they simply didn't have the time to build something quite that ornate. So a gentleman named Gene Winfield redesigned the shuttlecraft into the more familiar rectangle shape because they simply didn't have time to do the more ornate design that Matt Jeffries came up with. The shuttlecraft was basically made from a steel frame with masonite and a whole ton of plywood, which sadly did not age well throughout the years. But we'll get into that. The steel frame was actually the first thing to be constructed out of 2-inch square tubing, and after the steel frame was completed, 2 carpenters were hired in addition to Gene Winfield's crew to begin the main construction of the shuttlecraft.
So I hired these 2 carpenters because we had a lot of woodwork. We hauled in a bunch of wood and everything and started the main construction with 2x4s and things on top of my steel structure. And then we bolted some of that together, and it went along very well.
Gene Winfield actually found the rear foot of the shuttlecraft at an existing aircraft company in Burbank, California. He thought it looked cool, so he bought it, stuck it on the shuttlecraft. For the nacelles on the side of the shuttlecraft, they went to a well drilling company and they bought these giant, enormous tubes, stuck them on the side, added some details and a light in the front. There you go, shuttlecraft nacelles. After a whole bunch of wood filler, primer, and sanding, Gene and his team started painting. But it was actually the studio that put all of the cool graphics and lettering on the side of the shuttlecraft. They also created those really cool doors that would open and close. But again, it was the studio prop people that actually made them functional with the ropes and the pulleys, where they would have an off-camera guy pulling a rope and the doors would open. Now, in addition to the exterior, they also made an incredibly detailed interior. The interior set had what were called wild walls, and wild walls is a Hollywood term meaning that every 4 feet, one of the walls of the set could literally be pulled out so that the cameras could get in there and shoot from one angle. The shuttlecraft interior also had what was called a vertical ceiling. The walls would come up as normal and kind of curve in a little bit, and you'd see that on screen. But from that point, the walls would go straight up. And there was a whole area in this vertical ceiling, which is where they would put the lights in order to film the actors down in the set. This was an area you obviously never saw on the show, but it was there. Whatever happened to the interior of the shuttlecraft all these years later, I have no idea. If you know, let me know. The chairs were really cool. Gene Winfield basically took chairs that were around at the time, built them up a bit to give them the arm supports and a larger back, sculpted over the top of it, and then cast it in order to make multiple chairs for the shuttlecraft. Gene actually still has the actual molds to those chairs today. Pretty cool. The center panel of the shuttlecraft is basically just a bunch of knobs and lights that, again, Gene built them, but the studio lit them. Most of the knobs and switches Gene picked up at electronic surplus stores in Burbank, California, and a lot of the other details were just made by hand.
As far as the creativity of those knobs, we found some of those at a electronic surplus place, also in Burbank, California. Went over there and I spent several hours in this facility, and I bought all kinds of knobs and switches and things that are actually, they're little rocker switches, and they're made to light up.
The whole thing, believe it or not, was done in about 30 days. And that Gene Winfield design, that rectangular-shaped shuttlecraft, influenced the shapes of shuttlecraft in Star Trek for years to come. Now, this enormous shuttlecraft prop, remember, was just a prop. It wasn't designed to last 10 years, let alone over 50 years. So, after the cancellation of Star Trek, the shuttlecraft was donated to a school for the blind. For the life of me, I can't figure out what a school for the blind would want with a shuttlecraft, but that's where it went. Now, over the years, there were many different people who attempted to locate, buy, and restore the shuttlecraft, and it just never really happened. The shuttlecraft finally found its resting place in Ohio, and it sat there for years and rotted until 2012. In 2012, a guy named Adam Schneider and his wife bought the shuttlecraft in an auction for $70,000. And believe me, it was not in good shape when they bought it. According to Adam, they spent about 2 years even trying to find the thing before it went to auction. But this was an incredible historical piece, and Adam wanted to bring it back to its original glory. And he did. Adam went and he found a boat refurbishment company called Master Shipwrights, which was in New Jersey. The entire thing took, I believe, about 9 months to do. The steel frame of the shuttlecraft was really in good shape still. However, and unfortunately, most all of the wood was just destroyed and had to be replaced. And this is really cool. Gene Winfield, the guy who actually made the original prop, helped out in the restoration. How cool is that? And it's not like the restoration process didn't hit any bumps along the way. Literally 4 days after the shuttlecraft showed up to be restored, Hurricane Sandy hits and wipes out a lot of the equipment in the shop. Whew! But they carried on. According to Adam, it took about 2,000 man-hours in order to get this shuttlecraft back in shape. And after an incredible restoration process, the shuttlecraft was finally unveiled to the public for the first time on June 22nd, 2013. It was an amazing ceremony. Wish I'd have been there. The final cost of what it took to restore the Galileo was never revealed, although I'm sure it was a pretty penny. Okay, that's great, but where is it now? Well, it currently lives at Space Center Houston, which is the visitor center for NASA's Johnson Space Center. And yes, you can go see it. Kind of an interesting fact, the term space shuttle that NASA has used for years originated from Star Trek and the Galileo Shuttlecraft. Before the Star Trek shuttlecraft came into existence in 1966, space shuttle was not a term even used by NASA. Kinda cool. I certainly hope you enjoyed that little retrospect on what happened to the Galileo Shuttlecraft. It's almost as interesting as what happened to the original Enterprise model. But that, my friends, is the topic of a different video. And if you're new to this channel and you like this kind of stuff, please like and subscribe. I got a lot of new videos coming up on a lot of different topics. If you have any questions, as always, I'll try to answer them. And if you have any ideas for future topics, let me know in the comments. This channel has been growing like crazy in the last month, and I want to thank all of you for that. I truly appreciate it. And please stop back anytime as we continue our conversation on movies, music, and monsters. Movies,
music, and monsters.